with emphasis. Welcome to the September Strategic Planning Committee. On the agenda, item 1, apologies for absence and appointment of substitute members, please.
We have apologies from Councillor Rosie Herring.
Okay. Do any members present have a declaration of interest of any matters posted on this agenda? Okay, no. For those that attended the meeting on the 15th of August 2023, are you happy with the minutes as published? And if so, I will sign them accordingly. Great, thank you.
Sorry, we have one amendment, one typographical amendment to minute reference 137. There's a spelling of odour in a condition was proposed to which related to odour. The U's been missed out.
Okay, thank you for that. Right, item 4, my announcements. Under the Openness of Local Government Bodies Regulation 2014, members of the public or those parties to the meeting are permitted to film, broadcast or report on the meeting subject to the efficient running of the meeting not being affected. Only those people who have registered in line with the committee's speaking procedure can address the committee. Members of the public are requested not to call out during the committee's discussion on any item. All speakers will have 5 minutes to make their statement. Participants addressing the planning committee will be advised when they have 60 seconds of their allocated time remaining and will be expected to cease talking immediately on being advised that their time is up. Speakers may be asked to remain seated after they have addressed the committee to answer questions from the planning committee members. In the event of any dispute over these procedures, the chair's decision is final. Today, there are no planned fire drills, so if the alarm does sound, evacuation instructions will be given by democratic officers and the assembly point is at the bottom of the steps on the mount over to my right. Could all electronics devices be please switched off or onto silent mode? For those members using laptops, could I ask that they press the F1 key on their machines and a blue light would come on indicating the sound is muted. This meeting is currently being broadcast on the council's corporate YouTube channel. Therefore, when speaking, please use your microphones. There's a couple of other things I would like to add. I'd like to thank Kevin Parker for sitting in this chair for the last 3 meetings. A very great job he has done. And a special welcome today to 2 officers to my left. Second from the end is Phil Donaldson, and at the end is Hayley Usher. They're both from the Highways Department. So I was waiting for the gas. They're all here, but it's great for them to be here. So please make them welcome. Ask them plenty of questions, and they may want to come back. Thank you for that. Right, we'll move on to the actual agenda, which is item 5, which is the application 2023-0007. And I'll pass to Michael Osmond, the case officer, to present that, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. We're going to show a few slides to introduce the application to you. First thing to say is that it's part of the Northampton West Sustainable Urban Extension N4. And that plan there just shows the extent of it. And then we'll go on to the next slide to show you a bit more detail. In this presentation, I'll be mentioning 2 developers, Davidson and Bloor. Davidson's are the applicant, and it's just easy by mentioning the company names to distinguish between the land or their sites. This is actually an original master plan prepared by Bloor, which shows the principles that they were following in drawing up development plans. And New Sandy Lane, you can see going north-south or up and down on the right east side. And inside, there's a looping spine road, which ultimately is going to be an important link between the development and the surrounding area, when that's up and running. And that will, of course, that sort of accessibility will be advanced to the Davidson site as well, which is on the far left-hand side of that image. And then if we could just show you running along the bottom is the Roman Road where this development or this application is focused. So we could have the next one. This shows the land that Bloor do own. And the blue stripes indicate the first phase of their development. And bearing in mind, as I said, Roman Road, where we're talking about or going to be, is at the bottom of that image. You can see that what they're doing is developing further north, and then ultimately they will come right down to join Roman Road. And then you can, I was going to say, you can just about see under the labels the Davison land, but we can probably show you more easily on the next slide. And that introduces us nicely to the application site. It's that long, thin red line towards the bottom. But if you look carefully, sort of on the left-hand side, you can see a little tapering. There's a roundabout being shown sort of on the junction with Road Hill, and there's a tapering into the Davison site, which is edged in blue on that plan, which is showing where they want to bring a roundabout in to access their site. And obviously from where that point tapers in, that's showing the outline of the roundabout that's going to do that, and that will go up into the site to bring access to it. So if we could go to the next slide, and this is a more detailed image of what we are or what you will be considering tonight or this afternoon. Sorry, and it's almost a tale of three roundabouts, but the only one is part of the application. So that's the left-hand pyramid shape in red. That's the proposed roundabout into the Davison site. And then if you go along further, when you see that driveway, field boundary there, that's the roundabout that Bloor have permission for to develop their site when they get down to that part of it. And then the third one on the right-hand side is the work that is the new roundabout, New Sandy Lane, Roman Road, which is currently, or work is starting on that now as we speak. And that's going to obviously make a huge difference to the movement of traffic in this area. But the application is asking you for permission to provide that roundabout, then to provide a footpath wherever you can see those the green lines along Roman Road. That is basically where the applicants want to provide a footpath, which would then link up right on the right-hand side to the new Sandy Lane roundabout, where they're proposing a Toucan crossing, which is a crossing that can be used by both cyclists and pedestrians together. And the idea of that would be to take people safely across that roundabout, into the buses on the other side of the road. So can I have the next one? Okay, and this is an image or a photo from just showing the view of Roman Road, and then that's Road Hill just going off on the right-hand side. And that is basically where the roundabout is going to be. So the Road Hill will be a fourth arm of the roundabout, and two parts of Roman Road will be, and then the new one into the Davison development. And this is the view from Road Hill of the same area. And obviously the vegetation will be lost on the other side. And just for your interest, you can see a gateway on the right-hand side. And if we could just have the next one. That's a gateway to Bridleway KP1, which is referred to in the report. So there's no threat to KP1, but it will be affected at where it joins Roman Road now. It will be affected by the roundabout, and therefore there is a condition on the recommendation that they have to consult with the Highway Authority and sort out exactly how to make that connection. And then this is, showing what the roundabout will have quite a big effect. The colours are the sort of the blue shows the roadway, and then the purplish colour is the roundabout itself with the sort of displays connecting it to the road. And then you probably can't see it very well, but just running along the top is a kind of what I call mauvey colour, which is the footpath, part of the footpath that they're going to provide all the way along to Sandy Lane. And then so just imagine now you're going towards Sandy Lane. This is the Bloor roundabout, or the site of it. It's the existing access. I think in that image there, the roundabout itself will be just to the far side of the existing driveway access. And that differs from the Davidson one a bit. And if you could have the next slide. Because you can see there, the roundabout is a bit smaller, and can be because it's only a 3-arm roundabout, and therefore it doesn't come right across the road like the Davidson one had to do, because it linked in with Road Hill. And then we set off again, and now we've walked and we're down towards the new Sandy Lane roundabout site. As I say, site, because obviously you've got the roadworks being commenced now. And again, this is the same colours as were on the Davidson scheme. And what is significant here is it picks out, you can see that curve mauvish colour, which follows the footpath up towards a roundabout and curves round. And it doesn't show the crossing on this one, but that's more or less where the Toucan crossing will be. And so that anyone coming, sort of using the footpath, can use the Toucan crossing to cross, and then go to, have the next one. This is a more complicated drawing, and it's as well Phil is here, because afterwards you might want to ask him questions about it. But basically, this is showing the new Sandy Lane roundabout, and obviously there's quite a formidable structure, and that's why the Toucan crossing will be really helpful. Actually, because what happens, obviously they're keeping the bus stand on the road that comes in approaching the roundabout, so all that is there. But of course, with the people walking along, it's important to get them safely towards the bus stop. If we could have and this is obviously the bus stop is down Berrywood Road. And just to give you an idea of the distance, if looking at that photo, if you can just see in about the middle of the road, the back of a road sign, that's where the current bus stop is, and that's not moving very much. So having got people over the roundabout, they then still got to walk down there. I'm sure there will be, as and when the development is further developed, and the work will be going on, I'm sure, about increasing and improving bus accessibility using the new roads and roundabouts. So if we could have the next one. And this really is the last one. And I've just included that because it gives an impression. So you're standing on the New Sandy Lane roundabout, looking back up Roman Road. And basically this proposal will change, the appearance of the right-hand bank as you are looking at it. It will, one thing it will do is it will enable Roman Road to be widened to 6 meters all the way along its length. And then when you come up onto the verge, it's going to provide a 3 meter wide footpath, which is wide enough for both cyclists and pedestrians. Although there is a short, it's over 1,000 meters long, and there's about 100 meters or so where the it narrows down to 2.5, but it's still usable. And of course that, as it's coming out of Roman Road, then you would see the footpath sort of sweeping round to the right before coming back over the new Sandy Lane roundabout. Hopefully, Chair, that's conveyed the scope of the application, and the decision the committee is being asked to do is basically grant planning permission for the 3 elements. The first roundabout going into the Davidson site, the footpath connecting that roundabout to Sandy Lane, and then the third element would be the Toucan crossing going over the roundabout. You're not being asked to consider the principle of the housing development. Obviously, that's already been established through the local plan, the local plan as part of policy N4, Northampton West. And when you later on, you will have the opportunity, obviously, to consider the Davidson application for the housing development when that comes in. And that's the time at which you'll be able to look at the detail of the, the impact on traffic movements in the area and the way in which the site's proposed to be developed. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, thank you, Michael. I know James wants to add a bit before we get to questions.
I just wanted to talk members through the written updates. So on page 8 of the written updates, we're simply adding a plan that was omitted from the report, and that would be included in condition 2. There's a simple sort of typographical clarification to condition 5, the EMP. After the report was published, the applicant has clarified that it's looking at nearer circa 450 dwellings rather than 500 to 600 as referenced in paragraph 7.3. We've had a sort of late rep from a local resident. That's kind of alluding to matters that would be covered by the transport assessment that would come forward with an outline planning application. But Phil and Hayley have kindly given us some commentary for the written update. So you will see on page 9 that we have their comments directly in response to that, points raised by the local resident. And then I'm not going to cover this in detail now because I'm conscious that we have the applicants going to speak. So I'm not going to sort of preempt their speech, but the applicant has requested that there will definitely be a section 278 to cover the highway works. That's not in question, but we were proposing a section 106 agreement, and the applicant is raising the point about whether that is strictly necessary. In your officer's view, we think it is. We will obviously consult with our legal colleagues on this matter in terms of as the agreements progress. And they've also commented insofar as some of the conditions, again, whether they're duplicating what would be covered by a section 278. But I just thought it might be helpful to give a sort of simple example about why there are sometimes differences between the highway authority and the planning authority, and the lighting one's actually a very simple one to do this. So for section 278, in terms of lighting, the highway authority will be ensuring that the lighting is effectively satisfactory in terms of vehicle safety, pedestrian safety. Effectively, they're looking at the highway impacts. Now, you might say, well, surely the local planning authority would be exactly the same, but this is a sort of location where there's building coming into countryside, and we might have an interest in ecology, such as bats, who can be affected by lighting. Now, that overlap into ecology is not something that would be part of the remit of a section 278. So the point I'm alluding to here is if we didn't have a lighting condition, as a local planning authority, we wouldn't be able to, if we wish to consider ecology, we wouldn't be able to, because we don't have the lighting details submitted as part of the planning consent. It's simply been left to the 278. So that's just one example. So the approach we're taking, and I know the applicant's going to speak about this, so I think we're going to discuss it further, is that there are differences between the role of a highway authority and a planning authority. So in effect, your officers at this point in time are not agreeing to the removal or deletion of conditions or the requirement for a section 106 agreement. But we do have Catherine, our legal advisor, here. And as I say, I think the applicant's probably going to raise some comments on this. So I won't comment further at this point, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Before we invite the applicant forward, do any members have questions of the officers? Councillor.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a question, just a confirmation. This is Davidson Homes applications. It's not a Bloor Homes application.
Yes, it's
Or Davidson Developments Limited.
Yes.
So it's not
Yes.
any other company, if just to confirm.
Yes, sorry.
I know it
just-
goes into two different sites, but
Yeah.
or that you,
So
Michael did reference two different sites.
yes, so the SUE has more than one developer, but this application is from Davidson's. And sorry, perhaps what we should say is an overarching point is that officers definitely welcome the fact that this developer is bringing forward early in the planning process highways infrastructure. I think we could easily miss that point, but actually it is definitely a sort of plus point, as it were. But yes, in answer to your question, it is just Davidson's.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, I've got a couple of questions then about that application. I'm not sure whether to ask them now or ask them following the applicant's
Well,
presentation.
you might benefit from listening to the
I
applicant
think so.
first, but that's your choice.
Yep, happy to do so. Thank you.
But I'd like to echo James's comment. It's great to see an application come forward for infrastructure, so people can actually walk to where they need to be before the houses are actually there that they've needed to walk to. And I think that's exceptional. Any other questions of the officers? Okay, I invite the applicant, Mr. Paul Waterfield, to come forward, please. The microphones are not that sensitive, so if you want to bring it very close to yourself, you'll gain maximum benefit. If you press the button in the middle at the bottom, you'll get a red light. Then when you start to speak, I'll give you 5 minutes and give you a 1 minute warning. Thank you.
Very much. Thank you, Chair and councillors. Davidson's welcomes the opportunity to speak in support of this application as applicant. My name is Paul Waterfield. I am the Technical Director for Davidson's Homes South Midlands. And I'm responsible for the design and delivery of this application on this scheme. Firstly, may I take this opportunity to thank officers for their continued engagement and proactive engagement in bringing the first element of this allocation scheme forward. We control part of the adopted allocation known as N4, which comprises of a total of 2,550 units. And members will be aware that, of the approved outline application progressed by Bloor Homes for up to 1,750 units, which lies adjacent to the east of our land control. This infrastructure application is for a roundabout and footway cycleway. It's quite important that I mention that, along Roman Road, and represents the first phase of our development, which will facilitate the N4 allocation for residential development for up to 450 units. The application for the residential element of our scheme will follow in the coming months, just to confirm that. The roundabout and subsequent footpath cycleway runs along the north side of Roman Road and links with Berrywood Road via a Toucan crossing, as mentioned by the officers, over the new Sandy Lane roundabout. This will enable residents and existing uses to access bus routes and nearby facilities and other amenities. The benefit of this application being processed ahead of the wider residential scheme is that it will allow us to provide connectivity to the wider areas, help deliver the allocated site in a timely manner, and aid the Highway Authority with the control of the highway works along Roman Road. Part of the footpath proposed through the application, which crosses over the Bloor roundabout, will be temporary, and will be replaced by the approved Bloor roundabout at the time of their construction. As noted in the officer's report, there are no objections from consultees, and the application has the support from Highways. There is a set of proposed conditions which would secure various mitigations, including the treatment of existing bridleways and the landscape details, and also a section 278 agreement will technically control the highway works and details as proposed on the submitted drawings. I'd just like to point out as well, we will be funding this application. We'll be funding the construction of this infrastructure. I don't think there will be any financial contributions within a 106 agreement. And as such, any planning conditions that are agreed can kind of catch any details required under ecology or such like. To conclude, the proposed complies with the policy and is acceptable in planning terms and will make a positive contribution to active and safe travel by provision of approximately 1,000 metres, i.e. 1 kilometre of footpath cycleway linking the new roundabouts and new Sandy Lane roundabout, and provide a Toucan crossing for onward safe movement into Northampton. Thank you to the council for recommending this application for approval, and I would politely invite members to follow the officer's recommendation for a delegated approval. Thank you for listening, and I invite any questions or queries to help members positively conclude the application if required. Thank you.
Thank you. Well in time. Thank you. Members, who wants to ask a question? Councillor Pritchard.
With regards to your roundabout, and also when you look at the other roundabout, provisions will be at the much larger roundabout. There's actually provisions there for pedestrian crossings. Are there any considerations being given to your roundabout with regards to pedestrian crossings?
There is a bridleway that connects into the roundabout, which details need to be agreed with the Highway Authority in terms of those details. The footpath along the northern side of the road, Roman Road, will obviously continue and connect up any other footpaths that connect into the Sandy Lane, new Sandy Lane Relief Road roundabout, and also a footpath, I believe, on the left-hand side as we're looking at it, the western side, to connect up the employment area, the existing employment area as well. So all those details and specific pedestrian crossings would be captured within the section 278 agreement with the local highway authority.
Okay, and final question, when you talk about footpaths and cycleways, are they exactly the same, or will there be a footpath and a cycleway?
So generally a footpath / cycleway is normally in the region of 3 metres wide, whereas a footpath is normally 2 metres wide generally. So this is a 3 metre wide footpath cycleway, so it's both uses. So they're not segregated, but they are a wider footpath to allow for cyclists, sorry.
Thank you.
Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Couple of questions. One, I fully encourage good access to paths, footpaths, obviously in road networks, and I welcome the proposal, with exception in terms of the segregation of footpaths and a cyclist or a cycle lane. Clearly, we have many users of footpaths, as we know, and obviously they are sometimes with mobility aids and sometimes not, and dog walking, etc. So there needs to be some sort of segregation to make it safer. So I appreciate what you just indicated about the 3 meters. Although note from our officers that it's not 3 meters all the way across. I think there are areas that goes down to 2.5, I believe Michael indicated earlier. So it's just an understanding about how that merges. I would definitely like to see clarity on that. And in fact, it doesn't need to be more than a different color surface, if you like, between one and the other, but it would then literally make it much safer, I think, in terms of the mixture of people using it. In terms of the road itself, can you confirm it's a 30-mile or 40-mile-an-hour area proposed?
I believe it's 30 mile an hour, or will be proposed to be 30 miles an hour.
Right, good old Romans built straight roads, but good old modern convenience vehicles that drive at quite fast rates will certainly exceed 30 mile an hour on that sort of road, because that route basically has break points in terms of roundabouts, but it really is unfortunately, it looks like a bit of a launch pad in some areas. So I'd welcome some sort of speed mitigation now, rather than it being rectified later on following collisions, accidents, or speeding problems. So I appreciate, as a good developer, obviously you're encouraging, and we would absolutely encourage quality new homes, the right place, that we'd have some infrastructure ahead of it, and that there would be some sort of plan for mitigating speed. I absolutely appreciate it's not your staff doing it. It won't be, I'm sure, but it will be the residents of the area there or those visitors to that site. And I think we really have to encourage a safer way of accessing that. And the other last point is in terms of lighting and the crossing points on a 30-mile-an-hour area, there should be sufficient lighting, but can we absolutely ensure that there are good lighting areas around that roundabout for both visibility and pedestrians crossing, because that really is a difficulty, particularly that area, because it's a very rural area at the moment. Thank you.
If you've got any comeback comments on those questions.
Just to point out, I think all the things that you've raised will be again picked up through the 278 process with the Highway Authority, and also if there needs to be any planning conditions to satisfy those details, you know, we can accommodate those as well. So, yeah.
Thank you very
If
much.
that's okay.
Yes, Councillor Pearson.
Couple of questions, might be to you or might be to officers as well. I suppose the first question, what is Michael's excellent pictures were taken in winter. Not all of them, but certainly the one I was thinking of. My question is that there will be some net loss of biodiversity. How can that be minimized, and how long will that take to reinstate? Because it looks like you're going to be demolishing an amount of hedgerow and then needing to replace that. Yeah, try and deal with that question first.
So yeah, you're absolutely right. There is, I believe, a planning condition, or will be a planning condition that picks up the landscape designs as part of the BNG and the loss of any BNG. We will then wrap that up with a site-wide BNG calculation, and also look at the loss within this application as a whole site. So the BNG calculations will be included within the outline application to come. But in terms of the details for the landscaping, they'll be conditioned, and there will be proposing new hedgerows and areas like that.
And my second question, which actually the chair may rule out of order, but we'll have a go.
Give me a chance.
Is about, so we're providing this footpath and cycleway. To what extent does that fit into a wider network? Yeah, are we just creating a footpath that starts and ends at 1,000 metres, or would it link up into cycleways so that people can get into the centre of Duston or the centre of Northampton, to Country Park, those sorts of areas?
From just my comments really on that is obviously we're connecting our application or our allocation roundabout through to the Sandy Lane Relief Road roundabout at the top, which will connect into either a footpath cycleway network. I'm not quite sure if it does following on from Sandy Lane, but certainly we are connecting into to the Sandy Lane Relief Road network.
I could perhaps help with that, Councillor Purser. On the eastern side of the Sandy Lane roundabout, there's an extensive wide cycleway stroke footpath that I use extensively, which connects into the town from there. So there is a significant joining point on that corner. Yes.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Councillor Russell.
Could you give us a bit more information about why you think a section 106 agreement isn't necessary, which has been alluded to by the officer, but if you could just give your perspective on it, thank you.
For me, it's really what the planning authority would want to secure through the 106 that couldn't be secured through either a planning condition or 278. So if it's timing, for example, with regards to the delivery of the road, that can be a timing condition that it needs to be within, completed within first occupation or as an example. I've not been close to the discussions. I know my colleagues have regards to the reasons why a 106 would be required, but from my point of view, it'd be interesting to understand what the specifics are to see if they can't be done as a condition.
You happy with that, Councillor Humphries? Councillor Russell.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation. I'm a bit concerned about pedestrians walking along what seems to be a very competitive part of the road with a roundabout with 4 arms heading to a bus stop. Is there going to be, what sort of public safety mitigations are there going to be to allow, for example, children with bikes to cross that area and for mothers with buggies to go and stand on the bus stop? Will there be a railing protective against the bus stop? Will the bus stop have a bus shelter? Will it be lit so that people can see where they are? I think this is a very competitive area for people to have to walk and negotiate with heavy traffic.
I think, again, the road safety audits that we'll have to go through in terms of the 278 process with the Highway Authority will identify any requirements for speed restrictions, as it's been mentioned about speed control, and also any protection that may be required through barriers or through any kind of pedestrian safety along that road. So apologies, I keep kind of saying that it's going to be through the section 278 process, but that's quite an important and detailed process that we have to go through with the Highway Authority, which picks up road safety, specific details, approved details of pedestrian barriers, for example. So until we get into that detail with Phil and his team, then the kind of research that we'll do in terms of the speed restrictions and speed traffic counts, etc., or speed counts, then that will almost determine the details that are required. That's okay.
Councillor Pritchard.
Just, I don't, this particular question seems very obvious, but are there any parking restrictions along that stretch of the road?
No, not currently.
No,
No.
so anybody could park along there and I know that's a bit of a silly question,
there's-
but
So because there's no houses proposed within this application at the moment, there's no additional movements than what there are now. Yeah, I don't know if anyone else wants to add to that, but
yeah, because I say, when you look at clearways and so on and so forth, you know, that
Yeah.
you can imagine this road's going to get quite heavily used once all of the development has been finished. You can imagine there'll be an awful lot of traffic going along that road.
yeah, I mean, there may be we might have to put some double yellows. Again, that will be flushed out through the 278 process as well. So.
Okay.
On specifics.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions? A couple of things I'd like to add. I'd support councillor Russell and the fact that when you get near the roundabout end, that I'd like to see protection barriers at that point when you're going along there. With most well-used roundabouts have protection barriers around to separate pedestrians from traffic. And my other question, I have your planners of, I know we're moving on into when they develop, consider this is a very important area because it will become the new western gateway to Northampton town, because you will reach your roundabout in effect, and suddenly you're in Northampton, and that isn't the moment. It's at the current Sandyland roundabout. And I'd like to think your planners maybe make something of it. If you imagine the road coming in from Kissenbury, the Whedon Road into Northampton, there's avenues of trees and then it welcomes you to the town and sets a sort of a mood as you come in. You think, right, I'm entering an urban area. And it's nice. So I'd like to think and I know it's not the red line we're talking about, but I'd like to think your planners would think of it in that mode, that it's an entrance to the town and should be treated as such. It's just put forward. Thank you.
Absolutely, that is, you know, we see this as a gateway as well. This is why we have kind of acquired this site. It's the first site you see as you're entering it, and we're setting the scene as Davidson's as we do anywhere. You know, we're very proud in terms of placemaking, and I can say that there's some really good features that we're bringing to this area within the plans.
Thank you. In the absence of any other questions, then thank you for your time. Right. Does the officer want to come back on anything before we get into the debate, or James perhaps wants to come back with something?
I don't think we as planners, but I don't know if you want Phil and Hayley to give any
No, I mean
comments.
officers in general. Anybody want to come back with
I don't know.
what's been said so far before we get into the debate?
Phil or Hayley have any comments?
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add to what's just been said, really. I wouldn't disagree with anything that's been brought up so far. The preliminary design has been through a road safety audit, the first stage of an audit. We will then follow that with a second stage once a detailed design has been provided, which will be necessary for the Section 278 agreement. And a lot of the issues that have been highlighted would be picked up and considered at that stage. The fine detail of positions of guardrails and all that type of thing.
So if you consider something like 30-mile-an-hour limits, that wouldn't, you'd construct the footpath first, then that would come in once the development itself starts, the restrictions, or would you impose a limit before when would you move the signs?
It would be done to so that the two could be done. So you know, once the sort of temporary roadworks are off, and we would expect the speed limit to be implemented to tie in with the completion of the scheme. So for a while there'll be temporary roadworks as the roundabout and footway are constructed, which obviously impacts on speed. But we would expect it to be fully in place as it opens up to drivers.
Okay, thank you for that. Yes, councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a point on that, if I ask, could we stipulate that as a requirement that the road would be reduced in speed ahead of any occupation of the homes? I say that because quite clearly once people start to move in and they see it's still a 40. I mean, is it currently a 40, isn't it? Or 60, isn't it?
I
I'm
think
not
it's
sure.
de-restricted.
It's national speed
60.
limit.
And picking up a point that Councillor Pritchard mentioned earlier on in terms of parking, and I can see quite easily vans parked along the side of the road there because they can't access the main site because it's under construction. They don't want to get muddy wheels, etc. So I think we should be looking to impose a speed restriction and bring that down to 30 ahead of any occupation of the site, to make it very, very clear that that is a new site. And it does concern, Mr. Chairman, about the straightness of the road, the Roman road, obviously, that there will be speeding issues there unless we absolutely plan really carefully now and implement it ahead of occupation of some sort of restriction mitigating measures on that road, because roundabouts are good, but I've seen it in Milton Keynes an awful lot. People speed up in between roundabouts and end up on the roundabouts. There's some horrible accidents that take place there. And it really is our responsibility to try and find a way to take that problem away before it becomes one, if we're trying to encourage a good residential area. And things like recycling bins on the side of the road there because of dog walking, etc., and pedestrians using that road, which we obviously want to encourage, but the cycling element there as well. Where are those points taken on board? Are they taken on board now and you feed them into the planning application or the planning restrictions?
I mean, as a detailed design comes forward, a lot of that would be considered at that stage, but the issue here is there's an adjacent site for which we don't know what the frontage is going to look like. So there may be requirements on that permission when it comes forward to deliver parts of that. It'd be very difficult to start putting parking restrictions along that stretch of road at this stage when you don't know, is there going to be a lot of direct frontage access along there, or is there going to be none? You know, it's difficult at this stage to know that, but it is something that can be dealt with when that application comes forward, and we can place conditions on that development to provide some of these things that you're talking about.
I'd very much hope, Mr. Chairman, that these points we're raising today are noted and taken forward, because clearly committee here are giving valuable feedback, and it's an early stage. It's early enough to advise colleagues as to the thoughts and views of the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'd ask James directly on this application. In this case, where we are now, can we talk about speed restriction? Is a condition. Sorry, is a direct question. And parking.
Yeah, I
Like,
think
this
the-
straight road has a potential to be a nightmare of a speed trap with white vans all along the side of it in its worst instance.
well, highway safety is a material plan consideration, so the answer would be yes. It would just be in terms of how we'd construct it, but it's a quite sort of simple point. So yeah, I think the answer is yes, we could include it as a requirement of the planning consent.
Very helpful answer. Thank you, James. Right, so we'll probably move into the debate at this point then. So who wants to? So yes, sorry, Councillor Stone.
Could I ask a couple of questions?
Absolutely.
Could I just ask what the 106 money would be applied for? I can't find it in the papers. Sorry if it is there. And the other question I wanted to ask is, do we have any understanding of what the volume of pedestrian and cyclist use is going to be on that pathway? Because I'm quite in favour of dual use pathways in some circumstances, but this is a very long one. So I do think there are safety concerns there, but it depends on the volumes. You know, has there been any work to help us understand how that pathway is going to be and cycleway is going to be used?
Thank you. Officers? Do whichever bit first you like.
Obviously the development is at the very west side of the air policy area. So we would expect quite a bit of interconnectivity within the site. So pedestrians and cyclists should be able to pass through towards the Blore developments quite easily. So in terms of numbers, no, there isn't a specific calculation for the numbers that's going to be used in the cycleway and footway. But it's not going to be a heavily used route because there are going to be alternative options, more direct routes through the centre of the development.
Yeah, we tried to flesh this out a bit more on page 10 of the written update. So I'm going to kind of, to be honest, so to sort of assist members, I'm going to be cross-referencing that. But yes, it's through the section 106, we're looking to control that it's delivered as a whole, and that in matters concerning the timing and the phasing. There's a sort of wider point here that basically as a planning authority, we want to maintain involvement in this as the section 278 progresses, which is partly why I appreciate the applicants may have concerns. There's an element of duplication, but as you alluded to, Chairman, this is the gateway into Northampton, and as a planning authority, it's through that sort of section 106 agreement enables us to, how can I put it, maintain a degree of control over the phasing and the works as they move forward in effect. So the section 106 is giving us that control. I don't know whether Catherine wants to add anything, or whether Catherine thinks I've succinctly covered that.
Sorry, Chair, but does that mean you would determine the use of the 106 as and when it becomes evident that that use, whatever it is needed?
So, try the one next to that.
We go. Just so to clarify, there is currently two legal agreements being proposed through this discussion and the officer report. The first, as you've heard extensively about today, is the 278 agreement, which does deal with highways related matters. The section 106 agreement can be used either for financial contributions if they're needed, because they cannot be secured, for example, through planning conditions. However, a section 106 could also be used for matters that are considered outside of the section 278 or the remit of conditions. So it has an extra versatility in that respect. So we, as we are evolving this application with the applicants, the council is saying that currently we will want a section 278 agreement, and there may also be a need for a section 106 agreement as those details come through. We've heard this afternoon that there is the road safety assessment outcomes as part of the 278 agreement to be reviewed and to come out of that process. And there is lighting to be discussed potentially for footways and other parts of the development. There's also the bridleway connection details to be discussed as well. And it might be, as those details come through, that the council needs both a section 278 and a section 106 agreement. Does that assist?
So you're kind of saying if we don't have a 106, we could discover something that we want to condition, finance or whatever, and we'd be stuck with the other 278 if that wasn't within that remit. So it would be advantageous to have
It's
both.
prudent to consider both at this point of the application process. It is obviously, we are talking today about the red line boundary for the road footpath, roundabout footpath and cycleway. And I appreciate that from the applicant's perspective, there is a forthcoming outline application for the wider housing development. There is also the issue, as we've discussed today, through the officer presentation, of the connectivity, to the Bloor site, which is neighbouring, and to the Sandy Lane Junction site as well. So we need to be comfortable as a council that we can secure the relevant legal agreements to secure the right level of connectivity to make sure that the proposals, whether it's for the road or in the future, the housing side of matters, is going to be secured in line with policy.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Right, we are in debate mode now, so. I was going to ask the highways, the lighting on this application, is that just for the road or is it road and the pathway? Is it a dual purpose light, a high level light, or are we having low level lighting on the path?
I mean, it's yet to be designed, but the lamp columns would illuminate both.
Yeah. you
So
wouldn't- there'd
They
be no
would
need
sit
for
to
low
the
level
back
lighting,
of
would
the
there? Okay.
cycle path, yeah.
Thanks, Chairman. Just a question on the plans that we've got, or the illustrations before us. Are these illustrative in terms of the left-hand side looks incredibly spaced out versus the right-hand side that doesn't? And I understand that Bloor Homes have 1750 homes on their application or their outline application, and we're talking 2,550 on the left. Is that correct? So 4,300 homes in total. It just seems like a very picturesque piece on the left and not so on the right.
Okay, this plan, if you like, predated anything else. So it's their first thoughts, and I think it was at the time that Bloor were intending to develop the whole, or they were at least developing their ideas for the whole. There, as you rightly say, there's 1,700 odd units occupy the part which is not occupied or including Davidson, but that's all coming back. It all works back to the 2,550 in the plan. So I wonder if I could just say something about what's yet to come, which I think will help the discussions about people movement, whatever. Okay, if I just go over to the plan.
Please do. It'd be easier than James trying to follow you with a mouse, I think.
This is what I find quite exciting about this. It's quite a challenge, I think, however willing the two developers are to bring them together. And you know, I've had some discussions before about what's happened, but they weren't, you know, it's not really on their radar at the moment. But I think it's bear in mind that the Bloor scheme is approved for this kind of area here. So they still have to get more approval for what happens down here. And of course, they have to all this. Now, key thing is to make sure that the landowner and the development carried out by the two developers mesh. That's the point of a sustainable urban extension involving all these different parties. It's not that you want a partition up there, or you want partitions here or whatever. You don't want that. And this is where I think this relates to councillors' concerns about this particular pathway. I think this is I think it's a brave gesture, and I think it's to be applauded for the fact it's bringing forward the roundabout. But I don't think that is necessarily the future of pedestrian movement in here. Because if, for example, this is the Bloor Road, and if, for example, there was a bus coming down here, and you lived in the top of the Davidson development here, it's a short walk to get a bus there. And that's the kind of thing that's got to happen. And when I've spoken to Davidson's, you know, sorry to be personal, but it's easy about that. You know, we have been talking about how that permeability will work, you know, so that, yes, okay, you can go there and you can get the bus. they'll turn around the roundabout and take you into town. But on the other hand, there's a bus service up here, isn't there, that sort of winds around the streets. So we want something that winds around this, picks people up and takes them in and gets away from the emphasis on this and puts the focus on the kind of amenities. I mean, the amazing open spaces and stuff that's going to be in here. And, to be like a living space, a breathing space. And that's really what we want to see happen. And you can make happen because you've got, the power to grant permission for everything along here and up into there. And I sort of feel, and we did allude to it in the report in the last paragraph, that, as in a positive planning sense, your thinking about this kind of thing can be communicated now. And that would be, I think, a great outcome from today. Because it's all to play for. And you're the planning authority.
Yes, thank you, Michael, for that contextualisation that puts it in perspective. Yes, councillor.
Yes, can I kind of pick that up? And it doesn't relate to the red line of this application, but and accepting your comments about the network, how do we assure ourselves that there really is a forward-looking walking and cycling plan for this side of Northampton? Where does that discussion go on?
Do you want to tell that, James, or am I looking at Phil?
So the planning application that the applicant alluded to that's going to come in, we believe shortly before Christmas, that will involve a transport assessment and will look at pedestrian permeability and all of these issues. The slight difficulty with this application, it is just for a bit of infrastructure. Whereas the planning application will have all the strategy documents in effect. So I appreciate it might not be the perfect answer, but it's to come in effect.
Yes, I understand that for within that development, but how does it then relate to walking and cycling for that side of Northampton?
So, well, one thing I can say is that any planning application is linked to the planning policies and the overarching planning policies, and we've actually copied a key bit of it rather handily in the written update at the bottom of page 9, top of page 10. The policies that the overarching planning policies that relate to this SUE do require consideration of integrated transport, sustainable transport modes, consideration of walking and cycling. So the policy is there to enable us to try and do our best to address the very points that you're raising. Sometimes we don't have that policy background, but we do have it here. So I think actually that's probably a good way of sort of covering your question, perhaps, because it is there in the policies that are going to shape the SUE as it moves forward.
I haven't heard too much debate on the section 278 and then, sorry.
Chair.
Oh, sorry.
Could I just add to what James said. West Northants Council does have a cycling and walking officer, and he's tasked with looking at the wider sort of delivery of walking and cycling facilities. So looking at a much broader sort of delivery than an individual site such as this. And also, I mean, going forward, Active Travel England are now a statutory consultee on bigger planning applications. So they would have an interest in, as more of this this area comes forward with more detailed applications, that they would feed into that as well.
Thank you, Phil. Yes, councillor Stone.
This isn't directly related to the planning application, but taking my cue from planning officers. If we want to have some influence over the development, will there be provision for children and young people's leisure needs? And the reason why I'm asking that is because in new developments like this, in that proportion, without it, what we get is a kind of alienated generation of youth.
Thank you for that consideration. When we have the specific plans before us, we will consider them as such then, councillor Stone, and if we don't like the provision provided, we will make that point known then. That's fine. Thank you. Councillor Parker.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think the officer made the point. We're looking at a new roundabout, a footpath and a two-con crossing. That's what we're here for, to talk about. Whilst some of the other comments are valid, they're not here. We're not deciding that. We're deciding on those three things. And I think that's what we need to concentrate on, Chair.
Yep, I agree. We also need to consider this section 106 versus section 278 as a dual or whatever. Councillor Manners.
I support what Councillor Parker just said. I'm very happy to give officers the opportunity to use a 106 if they need to, which is what I think you're asking for. And so I fully support that proposal. And I would suggest that we move to a vote at some point in the near future.
I'm happy to take a proposal when we consider we're done. Does anybody want to make a proposal at this stage? Councillor Pritchard. Bad day for your microphone, isn't it? Sure, Councillor Manners will lend you his.
Thank you. With regards to this particular application by Davidson Homes, I would like to propose that we delegate to the planning officers to go ahead and accept this particular application.
Do you want to make a provision that we also condition the speed limit and parking restrictions at the same time? I think we discussed that and we seemed keen as a committee to add that as a condition.
As you quite adequately stated, Chair, I would like to add those particular proposals to the proposal that I've just made.
Seconder,
I'd like to second, but like to assist Councillor Pritchard, if I may, just to indicate that that's pre-occupation of the first home, that the road will be reduced to 30 mile an hour, just to make it very clear in terms of what we're saying here today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Parker.
I presume that was seconded then, Chair. I'd just like clarification on that from the highways. I'm not sure how you can put a reduction on a speed on the road when the houses have not been built, because you don't know the frontage of what's going on to that road. So I'd take advice on that one. It might be better to wait on that one, but I'll listen to advice.
I was going to ask Catherine a minute whether that was an acceptable proposal. That's all right.
Thank you, Chair.
Is that an acceptable proposal?
What we would normally do when we're adding conditions to a recommendation, we've got an amended recommendation before the committee this afternoon in any event, as highlighted in on page 10. We've also obviously had the request for a condition regarding road speed. Normally, what we would do is take any proposed wording for conditions to be agreed separately by basically delegated to the officers for that wording to be agreed. In terms of the trigger for the imposition of that condition, that is a matter for our highways team, rather than, it's not so much a legal matter. But I think we would need to discuss that wording and agree a form of wording for the condition. And that should just be delegated to officers in a normal way.
Okay, thank you. I'll turn to Phil to comment on his.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the highway authority is concerned, we would, in terms of a trigger, I'd be concerned as applying a trigger to an adjacent development that is yet to be come forward as an application, I don't know if that's even possible. We would want the 30-mile-an-hour limit in when that roundabout is complete, because the roundabout has a design speed which makes assumptions on what the speed limit is going to be. So I actually think that we would want that speed limit change before any occupations in an adjacent development that hasn't yet been approved.
I think that's excellent advice, Phil. Thank you very much indeed.
So, Mr. Chairman, so just to confirm the officer's advice then, sorry, it's Phil, is it? I can't see him. Oh, thanks. So the speed limit would be reduced at the time of the construction of the roundabout, which would be pre-occupation of any of the sites. Is that correct? What we're trying to avoid effectively is somebody moving into the house and then finding perhaps 6 months later the road speed limit has been reduced.
Yeah, but I think Phil makes the point, and very well, that, you know, the road could be constructed, the roundabouts are there and the houses would never be built. You know, you don't know, do you? So tying it to that development is speculation. We haven't seen it yet. So it's much better, as you say, there's a speed limitation on the roundabout. Well, some people try to exceed that speed limitation on the roundabout, as they do in Milton Keynes. But it would be better to get the road and the roundabout sorted, the infrastructure done, and at a standard that's happy with the highways before we proceed.
Just to sort of help committee and summarise a bit. So our legal officer is saying that the triggers should be based on advice from highways. Highways are saying to you that they're going to be quite, it's going to be an early trigger, basically. But with the point you're raising is getting a bit too detailed, I feel, which is where I was looking across suddenly at the legal officer. I think we're very comfortable as officers sort of with the additional recommendations, but the trying at this stage to say 0 occupations, it needs to be sort of linked back to the, exactly as Phil outlined, a sort of a highway safety argument.
Yeah, I think Phil has outlined it succinctly, and I'm sure Councillor Gonzalez is happy with that recommendation.
I am to a degree, although I have to say I build on experience, having moved into an area that had previously a 40-mile-an-hour area, and it went down to 30, and residents effectively were not abiding by it, indicating that they'd moved into an area that was 40, and all sorts of silly battles about it. So it's just a matter of road safety, and that's what I'm after here. So as long as we can put that in, I'm happy to go along with officers' advice on that. But if we're talking early, it needs to be a community established on that site.
So as I understand it, we're voting on the amended resolution, which includes the section 106 and advice as on the conditions from highways as to the safety aspect. I believe that's what we're voting on. That's been proposed by Councillor Pritchard and seconded by Councillor Gonzalez. Are we happy with that proposition? If so, we will take, oh, sorry. We will take a vote on a show of hands. Those in favour of that proposition as outlined. That's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed for that. There is no, to my knowledge, any urgent business. I would like to thank Highways for both of them coming on today, and they've been invaluable in this particular discussion that have made life so much easier for the committee. And I just welcome them to come to many more meetings in the future, please.
Chair, could I actually also request that as many meetings as possible in the future that Highways could attend?
Yes, I think we will echo that, and I think this is hopefully the beginning of the bright future. That's 3:18. I close the meeting, and thank you for your attendance. Thank you.